Curtis Bush, and he has been so kind to get on here tonight with me and just kind of talk about his journey over the last year. So just real briefly wanted to start off with, what brought him in and what I did initially to gain some insight, to gain some information. It's really kind of like detective work. And thankfully, due to modern science and advancements in scientific testing, there's some excellent tests out there. So for Mr. Bush, he was having more GI symptoms with a pretty sudden onset, kind of middle-aged, and it was a pretty sudden onset. I'll let him explain a little bit more later. But we did this test. It's called a GI map stool test. And I love this one. It is one of the only ones that analyzes the stool on a DNA level. And it came back. They found a little bit of salmonella. It was a little bit in excess, but still equivocal, not a huge concern. Thankfully, no viral pathogens, no parasitic pathogens. Those are nasty to deal with. There was no H. pylori infection. That's a stomach infection, the most common stomach infection. And then you see here, normal bacterial flora. These are the beneficial probiotic bacteria. And he had 3 Bacteroides, Enterococcus, and Escherichia were all 3 higher than they should be. This creates dysbiosis. There should always be a balance between the good and bad bacteria. And so this was one of the first things that we found, showing a gut dysbiosis or imbalance in the gut microbiome. All right. Coming down a little further, we've got some nasty ones, potential autoimmune triggers, some opportunistic bacteria, but he was negative there. Additional, dysbiotic bacteria, overgrowth bacteria, negative. And then we get down to more parasites, all negative. Fungi and yeast, so candidas, fungi and yeast were all negative. So this is not seeming like too big of an issue. And then we get down to the last page, and I know it's a little bit tough to see, but this test for elastase, which is a measure of pancreatic function, and when it is low, which it should be over 200, his was 120. When it's low, this is a great indicator for SIBO. It's a very common stomach overgrowth, bacterial overgrowth. It literally stands for small intestinal bacterial overgrowth, and so that's another thing that we discovered. So decreased pancreatic function, and then finally his GI was on fire. His medical doctor literally said it was a sunburned gut, and he had been diagnosed as an ulcerative colitis by his MD, and we just had a kind of a confirming test here. Again, this number should be under 50. One of the only ones I've seen above 2,300, and then there was actually some blood in the stool. So back to me and you. All right.
Oh,
and very good. So just initially, Mr. Bush,
yes.
What benefits and changes have you noticed in the past year?
Yeah, this started about, like, as you said, almost a year ago. That was when before I went to the doctor for the ER, I had extremely low energy, was extremely dehydrated, poor diet, lost about 30 pounds within a month during those early days. And since then, with the aids of supplements and better diet, my weight has stabilized. I've gained a little bit of weight, better energy, feel like I have reserves. So it's not where I was before, but overall I feel just amazingly more healthy.
Great. Awesome. And so, yeah, a little bit more about how you were feeling. I guess it was a couple months, I think, that things started to really unwind. So just kind of how you were feeling. And again, I know that it's stool talk, but just kind of a little bit of maybe expansion on that.
Yeah, around the end of May last year, I started to have a loose stool, and since I've been healthy for most of my life, eating good, organic, raw milk, a whole bunch of those types of things, I always felt that the next day I'd be fine. Well, a month went by, I still sort of felt fine, but I still had those symptoms. And it was the second month that I started to lose weight and have less energy. We tried a bit of a gluten-free and dairy-free diet just for a little bit, but as you were mentioning with my sunburned gut, as it were, I think some of those higher fiber, non-gluten things were actually doing more harm than good. So the little information I had was doing harm and wasn't too helpful.
Well, yeah, and I wouldn't say maybe not necessarily doing harm. I mean, eliminating the gluten and the dairy is definitely a beneficial thing, but
Right.
sometimes there's other pieces to it, and when there is
Right.
a dysbiosis and an overgrowth like we saw, you've got to use certain herbs and botanicals to help rebalance that out. And then definitely, naturally decreasing that inflammation and the sunburn in the gut
Yes.
was crucial. If you could just briefly kind of talk about the difference between kind of the personalized Tyler Wellness Center approach and what you typically get from the medical doctor. There's a lot of people, I mean, I know you and I know this, but there's a lot of people
Right.
who don't really know what somebody like myself does. It's a little more personable.
Doctor approach was more of a quick solution. He's seen some of those types of traits before. Therefore, there was a quick funneling into their system. The personalized method was, let's take a serious look at all of those results and the reports and how unique my body is, and then tailor something to that, and to have someone who has enough experience and broad familiarity with the choices that can help someone get better, as opposed to just being funneled into a pharmaceutical lane that is designed. They believe it's designed for everyone, but in my opinion, it's designed for those people who don't really want to be curious about a more natural solution.
That's a really good way to put it. And yeah, I think a lot of people do just kind of tend to lean towards the easy option. Well, super easy to take a pill. In fact, you were on quite a bit of really potent anti-inflammatory, the prednisone and things like that. And I think you just remember talking to you, felt like there had to be something else than just taking these strong medications with pretty significant side effects after a while. So, but like you said, I do think some people just tend to go for the easy option.
Yeah, and looking back at the medication with the prednisone, it was a hammer that was pretty effective right at the front. And I hope that it gave space to allow for healing, but that alone is not going to allow for healing. It's just, putting up the barriers. It's not creating a safe space for letting your body naturally do what it needs to do in order to heal itself.
Sure. I would kind of segue into why did you make the change from the route that you were going?
Right. Well, my background is, and growing up was much more natural, organic. I have family who uses essential oils. So the world of alternative medicine was not something that was foreign to me as a start. But what I found was that the pharmaceutical path, it just didn't feel right to me. It just wasn't, to me, the only piece of the puzzle. It was needed for that period of time to get me from the ER back to I can live on my own in that sense. But from then forward, I really didn't want to rely on that long term. And when the GI doc said, hey, you're going to have medication for the rest of your life, and at the same time tell me that I've got a significant higher chance for colon cancer because it's in my entire colon, I go, well, there's got to be something besides medicine that can help me avoid cancer.
Sure.
So I'd like to explore what other options are out there.
And I'm glad you said that about the medication initially kind of dampening the fire, if you will. And totally agree. I think that medicine absolutely has its place in times like that. I have a little more of an issue, as do I think you and other folks like us, with, well, okay, this will help dampen the fire for now, but it's also going to help dampen the fire for the rest of your life. We know that there's, you know, typically side effects with that. And so, so thank you. If I could ask, like, fears and reservations, did you have any fears or reservations trying this route? Maybe not as much as some, since your family was kind of used to natural alternatives.
I don't necessarily think it was a fear. I think if we go back to the first week or so of the 28-day diet and realizing how acute my condition was and how I already had some food sensitivities, for me, you know, it was really hard those first couple weeks to completely restrict. So I was concerned that that was going to be my life for the rest of my life.
Yeah.
You know, I wasn't quite sure that I was certainly wanting some healing faster than my body was able to heal. Going back to the personalized approach, you know, I was glad that we were able to work together to find some foods that may be acceptable, even though it's not necessarily ideal in those early days. You know, being able to add eggs and you know, red potatoes a little sooner than the protocol was suggesting. So really, I think my fear was, what is my lifestyle going to look like? Can I plan for a vacation in the future? I've got 2 young kids. I just don't want to see them thrive. I want to see them thrive for a lot of years. So it was a mix of those types of motivations that said there's got to be something besides the standard pharma protocol.
Sure. And we'll just finish up with why would you recommend this approach? Again, the kind of the functional medicine, natural alternatives, the holistic approach, if you will. Because a lot of people think, oh my gosh, this is really, really hard. This is going to be impossible. I can't eat that diet. There's no way. I just want to take the pill. So if you could shed a little light on that.
Sure, be happy to. There were a couple of people that, as I was sharing my journey, they recognized the need to make changes in their own life. And when I shared what I was doing during those 28 days and even gave them the binder for a little bit, they went, oh, good golly, I can't do that. Yeah. I just can't do that. So to those people, I would say that's a very natural first reaction. But think about where you want to be a couple of years from now. What is the lifestyle that you would like to have a couple of years from now? And are you making choices right now that will support that? For me, the results speak for myself. Even though I'm not back to the weight I was before, I don't have the same energy level. I feel like I'm close to 85% overall from where I was before all this happened. To me, the results speak for themselves. And even if I have to take certain supplements for a long period of time, that's still going, in my opinion, going to be healthier than any of the other choices that were made available. So yeah, I remember those fears. I was talking with people who didn't want any part of it. But just take a closer look at what you really think is important and give it a shot. I don't think you'll ever be disappointed with a natural path.
Well, I really do appreciate this, and your testimony, your story really speaks to the power of food. I get to see it on a daily and weekly basis, and it's exciting. It never gets old to see how it transforms people's lives. I really appreciate you kind of sharing and expanding, people's knowledge on just kind of natural alternatives to, bowel issues. It is vitally important. We think what we're putting in our system goes into our stomach and through our intestines. And if there are digestive issues, it's also important to make those changes, make, anti-inflammatory food changes. And that's what you've done. And so I appreciate it.
And thank you very much for your accessibility, your personalized approach, and to help me figure out figure out a path that doesn't make me dependent on necessarily anything long term. That we can get to the point where my body can, in fact, just have the good, healthy food and continue to thrive.
Awesome. Well, I appreciate it. Thanks for your time. and we will talk soon.
You're welcome. Thank you,
All
Dr.
right.
Chris.
Thank you.